But here, to help us sort out that mess, is Big 12 Insider David Ubben. Hey, David, how are you?
I'm doing good. It's been an eventful morning, but I'm doing good.
It has been an eventful morning. A lot of things flying around. Let's talk a little bit of Big 12 football. I know you watched the TCU Oklahoma State game. Your overwhelming feeling about the state of those two Big 12 contenders coming off of Oklahoma State's rather dominant performance over TCU.
I think the biggest thing is you look at the Big 12, and it's a little bit more top-heavy this year than we've seen in a long time. And you look at them really not having a great performance outside of league play, not really any non-conference wins to write home about. You do the math, and you look at the committee, and you got to think that the Big 12 is going to have a real issue putting a one-loss team into the playoffs. So for TCU, they're going to need a lot of help to make that happen. But for Oklahoma State, I think certainly we saw them play up to and maybe beyond their potential. We'll see if they can keep that up the rest of the season. I mean, you can't ignore this is the same team that was down 17-0 to Texas Tech a week ago. But when they play like that, I mean, they're going to beat any team in the country. Just being dominant on defense, explosive on offense, that's tough to beat. And we'll see if they play up to that potential. Obviously, with them getting Baylor and Oklahoma in Stillwater, it helps them out. But it's going to be an interesting next few weeks for the Big 12. I think Oklahoma State clearly has the best win in the Big 12, maybe one of the best and most impressive wins in college football. And so they've got that on their resume, but it's only going to get tougher for them from here.
TCU loses Josh Doxson. We still don't really know how long he's going to be out. I know that the injury looked rather gruesome when it happened. Assuming that TCU is without Josh Doxson for at least a couple of weeks, what does that do to the TCU offense?
Well, I think it's certainly, I mean, it's obviously a big hit for them. I mean, Trevon Boykin is a great player, makes a lot of plays, but Doxson makes him look pretty good. I mean, they've got a trust in each other that when he's in single coverage, Boykin's okay throwing it up to him. I mean, the guy's 6'4", and or no, he's not 6'4", I think he's 6'2" or 6'3", but he's going to fight for the ball. He's got great hands. Nobody's better in college football at jump balls this season. Sort of coming down with those, and he's obviously got great hands and a great vertical jump, and so he loses that ability. And I think Doxson too, maybe a little bit of an underrated route runner. He's great at getting open and sitting down in the zone, getting open in the middle of the field, but it hurts him in the red zone. I think that's where his loss is going to be felt the most. You saw when TCU had to go get some tough yards against Oklahoma State in the red zone, they failed. They couldn't convert a fourth down in the red zone early. Even late, they tried to go on fourth down and near the goal line, couldn't get it. Those tough yards in the red zone are always hard for spread offenses, and when you lose a guy that's that reliable in the red zone, I mean, you look at the Cowboys' offense without Des Bryant, it's basically the same thing.
Talking with David Ubben, Big 12 Insider here on DCTF Live. Get involved with the conversation, hashtag DCTF Live. David, I want to shift gears over to Baylor. They go to Manhattan and don't look as dominant as they normally do. How much of that do you chalk up to the fact that it's a night game on Thursday night in Manhattan? How much of it do you chalk up to the new quarterback? I mean, what do you take away from Baylor's performance in Manhattan?
Well, it's all those things. I think Kansas State, their offense is well suited to give Baylor some issues, and you saw that Baylor really struggled to consistently stop the run. I thought Jarrett Stidham played well, but still, you got to think that, especially in his first start on the road, his numbers aren't going to be probably what Seth Russell might have produced. And in the same situation, I think there's no question Jarrett Stidham's ceiling is higher, especially when you see him throw for 419 in his first start as a true freshman. That's really impressive. But I think, too, there might be an element of Baylor getting up 31-10 and feeling like they can coast. There's so many teams. I mean, Baylor breaks the will of teams very easily. A lot of teams, you get up 28-0 in the first quarter, and the game is not really competitive. I think we saw that happen to Baylor a little bit earlier this season against Iowa State, where they got up on a big lead early, and I think they took the foot off the gas a little bit. Maybe weren't as aggressive on offense. got a little bit lazy on defense, and it came back to bite them in that game. There's probably a universe out there in which things go a little bit differently, and Baylor doesn't get out of there with a win. I don't think they were really happy about giving Kansas State essentially a drive to try and go win that game. I don't think that's what they had in mind. So Baylor, I think, has some issues with maybe closing teams out a little bit, making things as convincing as they probably should be. I think there's some of that in play, and I think too, Bill Snyder doesn't deviate from what he does, and even though they were down, kept running the ball, kept doing what they do, and made Baylor pay for taking that foot off the gas a little bit.
Who has been in the Big 12? Who has been more disappointing to you, Texas Tech or Texas?
Well, there's no question. I think when you look at how they've lost games, you got to go with Texas. I think Texas Tech, we kind of knew who they were, and they've kind of been who we thought they would be. A offense that can put up a ton of points, and a defense that, while they've got better personnel this year, that personnel's still young. They've still got holes all over the place. It's a tough gig for David Gibbs. But Texas, there's no excuse for them to get bullied by Iowa State, getting blown out, never really competitive against TCU. And especially when you look at just how good they can be. I mean, that Oklahoma game, I think, is going to go down as probably one of the more perplexing results of the entire college football season. And that's sort of who Texas could be and who Charlie Strong wants them to be. And when you see them put that on tape and you compare that to what they've put on tape in so many other games, whether that be the Notre Dame game earlier in the season or the TCU game or the Iowa State game, 3 games where they've really just been embarrassed. Didn't look like they belonged on the same field. It's hard to be any more disappointed with a team in Texas.
We're talking with David Ubben, Big 12 Insider here on DCTF Live. Get involved with the conversation, hashtag DCTF Live. David, one more question before we let you go. We're going to put you on the spot right now, and we are holding you to this. November 9th, we're putting you on the spot. Taking into all accounts all the tiebreakers and all that fun stuff, who wins the Big 12?
I'm going to stick with Baylor. I think ultimately, I think everybody is probably going to take a loss. I think the Big 12 sort of doomsday scenario is kind of underway with TCU losing that game at Oklahoma State. I think that the best case scenario for the Big 12 was for Baylor and TCU to get to that Black Friday matchup, both undefeated. And if that's a close game, the Big 12 had a real shot to get 2 teams in the playoff. But now, I think with Oklahoma State, I still have questions about how good and how consistent they can really be. I still think they drop either the Oklahoma game or the Baylor game. I think Baylor, obviously, a tough matchup with Oklahoma this week. A team that runs the ball is going to challenge them, and they've still got to go to Oklahoma State. It's still tough for me to see everyone get through this slate undefeated, but I still think with everyone sitting there with one loss, I still think Baylor will emerge as the Big 12 champion.
He is David Ubben. He is the Big 12 expert around these parts. Yeah. Follow him on Twitter at David Ubben. That's Ubben. I feel like I need to spell that. Do you find yourself spelling that a lot?
No, I think I just get Ubben a lot because
Ubben.
people seem to be very willing to ignore the rules of English and the double consonant that makes a vowel short or long. But hey, more power to him, I suppose. I've stopped correcting people. I would say 70% of people go with Ubben the first time they try it. I've given up.
Let me tell you, as somebody who's got 2 P's in his name, that's I feel you. I absolutely do. He's David Ubben. Follow him on Twitter. We appreciate you, man.
No problem. Always good to be on with Greg Tepper.
There he goes.